Okay, Gavalti, good morning. Yesterday we learned a brisa, and today the Gemara is going to dissect that brisa. So I'm going to quickly read through the brisa, which started actually on Lamed Tes Amar Aleph, and then we will dissect. So the brisa says, Tanu Rabbanan. This is a pasuk that's after the parsha that talks about Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur. It says in the whole parsha Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, it details exactly what avoid is supposed to be. And then after it details it, it says, also kasher also. Do just like the Torah tells you to do by the Parkai and Mashiach, which is redundant because the Torah already listed in detail what needs to be done with the Parayam Davar Shel Tzibur. Ma ba'lumoid lichbal v'azasoi. We look at it like it's a doubling, a seconding of the seva for the tzivi for azah, the lama shemchisar achas mikol hamatonos l'asher v'leklo. Okay, ein li'ela matan sheva shema akvos b'chol mokem. I would only know that the Torah here is trying to indicate that the seven matanos that are done on the pareiches, those which are ma'akiv in every other place, those are ma'akiv here as well. Who's going back to Chazar the Brisa because we're going to be dissecting the Brisa. Matan Dalit Minayin. How do you know that the four matanos of dam on the mizbeach? How do you know that they also are ma'akiv? Talmud Omer Ken Yasa. It says lepar. Lepar is coming to add zepar yom kippurim. That par yom kippurim is also included in all the halachas that par kohen Mashiach and par helam davar shel tzibur has. Kasher also lepar. Zepar kohen Mashiach. That's to tell us that whatever applies to par helam davar goes back to par kohen Mashiach. So that par kohen Mashiach is also ma'akiv. Hachatos also includes elu seirei avodas kechav. In fact, the Gemara yochal al nimarbe shanimarbe other chatois such as seirei haragolim usirei roshei chadashim. Talmud loymar loy davke loy umarois l'rabbi says elu l'hoitus elu. Why would you say that the matanos of the seirei avodas kechavim are ma'akiv, but the matanos of seirei haragolim seirei chadashim not only are they not ma'akiv, they're a regular chatas chitzoni. Zok the brisa. Achashuriva because of a miit marbani es elu shemechaperin alaveris mitzvah yudua. I'm going to include korbanos that are mechaper on a very specific mitzvah. Umoitzi ani elu she'ein mechaperin alaveris mitzvah yudua. I'm going to exclude seir regalim, seir rosh chodashim, which are tuma mikdash v'kedashim, where there is no yediyah. Yediyah b'tchila, yediyah b'soif. So therefore, that's not a schomer because it's not about a specifically known affair. Then it says v'chiper. So we learned that tells you afal bishloi samach and v'nizlach afal bishloi nasan shirayim. So again, why do you apply the v'chiper to say that if the shirayim wasn't given, smicha wasn't done, kosher with the evet, apply that to the zrikas. Umar rois lifts all bazois ulahachshir b'smicha b'shirayim. Amrit poitel bazois shema akvis b'chol mokin. Normally azor in every carbon is ma'akav the ritzui, and umach shani b'smicha b'shirayim shein ma'akvis b'chol mokin. Gewaltig, that was the brisa that we learned, and now we're going to dissect this brisa bit by bit. Omar mar ein li elo matan sheva shema akvis b'chol mokin. Hecha. Where are these b'chol mokim that you're referring to that they are ma'akiv? Omar Papa b'para by para adumat ma'akiv. Rashi tells us because the Torah in Parshas Chukas tells us to do these matanos, and then the Torah says Chukas zois Chukas Torah, and the word Chukas mentioned in the Parasha of Karbonis also indicates that it's ma'akiv. Uvin goyim in the goyim it's ma'akiv because of another reason. It says zois tihiyah Torah Samatzara. Whenever you use a lashon havaya tihya, that means it's ma'akiv b'di'evet. So you find whenever there's matan sheva, it's ma'akiv b'di'evet. So that's what the Torah would be referring to. Matan arba nine, and therefore the Brisa wants to know how do you know that this halacha that it's ma'akiv applies to the four matanos that are put on the four karnos of the mizbech hapnimi. Talmud Leimer Kein Yasser. I don't understand. Ma'ishne matan zayin, the chsiva nechfilon, The Chen Yasa is going back on everything that the Torah outlined in the parsha of Parayom Lav Shel Tzibur, and the Torah talks about Matan Arba there as well. So the kfelus of Chen Yasa, do whatever you did to the Parakoi Mashiach, applies equally to the Daled Matanis as they do to the Zayin Matanis. So therefore, if the Matan Maish the Matan Zayin the Chesiva Nechfilon Matan Daled Namich Chesiva Nechfilon. The Ken Yasa means do whatever was done by the Parakoi Mashiach, which is referring to the Matanis Daled as well. Amar Bir Lo Nitzrucha El Rab Shimon. And Rab Shimon tells us that we don't see anywhere that you need 4 matanos. If you look at the parsha of the Parakoi Mashiach, you only see 2 matanos. If you look at the parsha of Parayom Lav Shel Tzibur, you only see 2 matanos. So you need them both together in order to get 4 matanos. So you need the Chen Yasa to connect them. So Zog to Gemara Lo Nitzrucha El Rab Shimon. The Tanya Rab Shimon taught us. It says by the Parakoi Mashiach, Keren Karnos. So the Lashon HaPosuk that the Torah quotes is V'nosan HaKohen Min Adam Al Karnos Mizbach Keteres HaSamim, and it has it with a vav. So we're working with Yesh Aim L'Mesayres, which means you focus on the spelling. So it says Karnos, which means 2, Shtayim, L'matu Omer. The same thing by the Parakoi Mashiach. It says Adam Yitein Al Karnos HaMizbech. But notice it doesn't say 4 Karnos. It says on the Karnos. How many? Maybe only 2. L'mato Omer Keren Karnos. So together, if you take the Parakoi Mashiach and the Parayom Dover, you get 4 together. Divrei Rab Shimon. So therefore, Dr. Rashi, the Omar Rab Shimon says like Sivi Be'el in each one of these 2 karbanos, it only mentions 2. Ushtayim acheres be'akeshe dehai kra iskish Parakoi Mashiach Parayom Dover kida amran lepar zeh kohen Mashiach. So therefore, the only reason why you apply 4 is because even lechatchila to each of these karbanos is because we're makish them to each other. But that's the first time we know about it. In order for it to be repeated, we needed to say the extra words of the pasuk of Ken Yasa. Divrei Rab Shimon, I don't need a hekesh. Hareyu Omer, it says in those same psukim, in both psukim, it says, V'nosan HaKohen Adam Al Karnos Mizbach Keteres HaSamim, Mizbech HaSamim, Mizbech Keteres HaSamim, Lifnei Hashem, Asher B'Oil Moed. And then again it says, Asher Pesach Oil Moed. So we're focusing now on Asher B'Oil Moed. It says B'Oil Moed, meaning Al Kol HaOmer B'Oil Moed. All of the halachas that are in the oil moed have to be done. All 4 karnos are in the oil moed. Rashi says, again, why is the oil moed extra? Hareyo Eimer b'shneim by Sai by Parayom Lav Shel Tzibur. And Sai by Parakoi Mashiach, it says Al Karnos Mizbech Keteres Samim Asher Lefnei Hashem Asher B'Oil Moed. But Hai B'Oil Moed Yiseruhu. Why does the pasuk need to speak out B'Oil Moed? The Aksiv Asher Lefnei Hashem. The pasuk says Lefnei Hashem. So we know you're in the Hechel. So why does it speak out B'Oil Moed? V'lamdecha al kol ha-karnos shebesoich ha-Hechel tzorich litay. B'Oil Moed means all the karnos in the Hechel need to put blood on it. And it says that by both. Sai by Parakoi Mashiach, Sai by Parayom Lav Shel Tzibur. So therefore I don't need to be makish them to each other. Each one Munei Obey says 4. Zog to Gemara. So Rabbi Yehuda, Ken Yasa, Rabbi Shimon used Ken Yasa to tell me that the Dalit Karnos are Ma'akav B'di'eved. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't need it because it's included in Vasisa Kasher Asa. So my Avadlay, what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do with the extra words of oil Mayed? So tomorrow, you know what Rabbi Yehuda will use it for? Levishalei Lamadnu Lepar Yom HaKippurim L'Smicha U'Lishyari Adam. It doesn't say anywhere when the Torah discusses the Par Yom Kippurim that you need to give it smicha. It doesn't say anywhere in the parasha of the Yom Kippurim and Achimois that you need to spill the Shiyari Adam on the Yisrael Mizbeach. Minayin, how do you know that that's the halacha? Talmud Lomer, Kain Yasem. So we learn smicha and Shiyari Adam to the par Yom Kippurim from V'chein Yasa. Freit Gemara Ulapar Yom Kippurim Loila Manu. We already have a built-in hekesh that we discussed already. That's makish all these halachas to the par of Yom Kippurim. Ha'amrit lepar, the Bride says lepar, zeh par Yom Kippurim. That's what it says right at the bottom of Amud Beis. Lepar is lepar Yom Kippurim. So oy bazoi, why do I need two limudim to apply what we're learning in this parsha to Yom Kippurim? One should be enough. Zok Gemara, no, I need both. Hitzrach. So kedai techamina, I would have thought the only type of avoidus that we're going to say apply to the par Yom Kippurim from the pasuk of lepar, I would have thought hanamili avoided them ach v'kapara. Only avoidus that are ma'akiv the kapara. However, I will avoid the loy ma'akiv the kapara, but in the avoidus tam ma'akapara, shvichas dam lishiraim, or doing smicha, those are not ma'akiv the kapara. So emaloi, maybe you don't teach those things to apply to the par Yom Kippurim with lepar. Kamash Lon Ken Yasa, that even the avoidus of smicha and the avodah of pouring the shiraim liyasoid, that also applies to the par Yom Kippurim. Frek the Gemara of Rab Shimon, hi ba'oil moyed my ovidlay. We said Rabbi Yehuda learns from ba'oil moyed that you have to spritz the dam on all four karnos. Rab Shimon needed a hekesh. So what is Rab Shimon going to do with the ba'oil moyed? So Gemara ba'oil moyed mi ba'ilay shem niftecha tikra shel heichal loy hayamasa. What if the heichal was broken open? What if the ceiling was leaking? It's not considered intact, and you wouldn't be able to spritz dam on the mizbeach. Now there's an entire shaila about this, because the Brisker Rav says that we say kitcher rishayna, kitcher l'shayda, kitcher l'lovay. The makam hamizbech you could still be makter on, even though there's no Beis Hamikdash there. So you see, the kedusha is independent of the structure. So he's mechalek in different dinim. First of all, maybe he's not talking about the heichal. Maybe he's talking about the mishkan. The mishkan didn't have kedusha on the land that it was on. So he talks about it. How will Rabbi Yehuda know? He used the oil moed to tell us that you need four zrikos. So how will he know that niftecha tikra shalhecha loyemasa? Ve'edech, Rabbi Yehuda is going to change his mind. You're right. I agree with you that oil moed is to tell you that if the roof is broken, that if the roof is leaking, that you can't do the zrikas down. Where do I know the four zrikas? May asher. Which asher? The second asher in the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, "Umin adam yitna al kanis hamizbech asher lefnei Hashem." Asher ba'oil moed. It could have said asher lefnei Hashem ba'oil moed. Why did it say it a second time? So the question is asher nafkalei arba karnis me asher. The matzil miklav asher lefnei Hashem ba'oil moed. Lamali lemahader ulemichtav asher ba'oil moed. Ella al kol akarnos asher ba'oil is telling you that asher is telling you it's all four karnos. So now we have a question: what Reb Shimon is going to do with the masher? Asher loy darish. So Memela, he doesn't have to darshan it. So it's not extra money. Abaya Amar. Abaya wanted to say le Rabbi Yehuda nami Isra. We are saying that why do we need the chen yasa for the four zrikas on the mizbeach? Because it only says it once, because you need both places to tell you four, two there and two there. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, who we learn from Asher, in each place, side by par kohen Mashiach, side by par l'ndav shel tzibur, that it needs four matanos. So now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, our Mishnah our Brisa doesn't make sense, because our Brisa brought a secondary pasuk of Ken Yasa to include the four karnos. According to Rabbi Yehuda, I should have known it anyway, just by comparing the two, by comparing the par helam davar shel tzibur to the par kohen Mashiach. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda nami Itrich Abai wants to say that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Brisa makes sense, and you need a separate pasuk to tell you that spritzing on the four karnos of the mizbeach we learn from the extra words of chen yasa. Why? If I would have only had the main Chasher Yasa, I would have said, Midi dehava asmicha v'shiyare hadam. We know smicha and shiyare hadam. We had the Bechiper to tell me that it's not ma'akiv. So I would have thought that these four chronos, Alpagav the Ksiva Nuchafilon, Loy Ma'akve. By Shmich and Shir Adam, it's also said twice. We had a special limit to say it's not Ma'akiv. So maybe Matan Arba Nami Loy Tisakiv. Maybe Matan Domim shouldn't be Ma'akiv either. Kamash Shalon, that they are Ma'akiv. Why should they be Ma'akiv? Why shouldn't they? They're not like Smicha and Shir Adam that are not Ma'akiv. The Lamaisa, they are Ma'akiv. So Rashi explains very beautifully. Rashi explains, since all four are not ma'akiv, because you're going to have a kapara even with one. So Zokt Rashi, Midi dehava asmicha v'shiyare adam, the parhalam guva dechsiv v'chvim v'loy makvi, kudukim niulayu. So therefore, maybe matan dam, matan arba, she'ein ma'akvis b'chad tzachitzoyna, nami lo la'akvu, l'mati nami me'v'chiba v'nislach, because all four aren't ma'akiv. Only one out of the four are ma'akiv. Kamash Shmuel, that there's no comparison, because the il smicha v'shirayim afilu akrinu lagamri le'ma'akiv. Even if you didn't do smicha at all, or you didn't pour the shirayim at all, it won't be ma'akiv. V'ilu matan damim, you don't need four. Four aren't ma'akiv, but one is ma'akiv. So therefore, we include that. We include it in the brisa. That's why we learn it out of the Chen Yaseh. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. Lepar. The pasuk says the word lepar. Let's see if we can quote the whole pasuk over here. But also lapar, kasher also lepar. So the also lepar, you should do to the par is saying do it also not only to the par Amdavishal Tzibur where this pasuk is located, but also do the same things to the par Yom Kippur. What do we need to learn from par Helam Davishal Tzibur or from par Kohen and Mashiach? What do we need to learn from there to Par Yom Kippurim that Par Yom Kippurim doesn't already have? Ila Akiv, if it's to tell me that it's Ma'akiv, Shita, I don't need a special limud from Par Helam Davish Tibor or Par Kohen Mashiach that's Ma'akiv, Chukak Sivbe. By the Parsha of Yom Kippurim, the Torah says, Alosh Chukah. Because at the end of Parsha Achamosh it says, and we already mentioned that whenever the Torah says the word chukah, it means to be ma'akev. We need it according to Rabbi Yehuda Shita. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? Yomar kiksev chukah in the Parsha Achamosh Lagaba Yom Kippur. Yes, the Torah said chukah, but it wouldn't be referring to the Matnas Damim. You know what it's referring to? It's referring to Dvarim Hanasin b'Big Day Lavan b'Fnim. It's only referring to avodas that the Kohen Gadol has to wear his Big Day Lavan while he is inside the Heichal of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Shem Hiktim Ma'aseh Lechaveiroi. The halacha there is that we learn from Chukah is that you need to follow the instructions precisely in exact order that the Torah lists it. And if he put one before the other that wasn't supposed to be that way, loy also loy klum, his avoid is possible. But things that are done in the big love and bechutz, also b'fnim means in the kodesh kochim, bechutz means in the heichal, which is where he's spritzing the dam in the heichal. I would have thought that where he's spritzing the dam bechutz, there hiktim ma'aseh lechaveiroi masha asa asay. The halacha is the dvarim anasim bechutz. If they're out of order, it's still going to be kosher. So Rashi teaches b'fnim is matanos uktor shal ben abadim. So the fnim clearly means in the kodesh hakodeshim. So dafka in the kodesh hakodeshim are the avoided the order that they're listed in is ma'akiv, but in things that are done b'chutz, which Rashi says matanos par v'sir shal aparoiches. So chutz means in the heichal. There, it doesn't have to be done in that very specific order. So since you see a leniency in the avodas that are done in the Heichal versus the avodas that are done in the Kodesh Kodeshim, Ema midechasidim loy ma'akve, even though it says chuka, but since the avoiders in the heichal are not ma'akev, the seder is a ma'akev, so maybe azois nami loy ma'akve, maybe the azois won't be ma'akev either. Kamash malam, that's why we need a pasuk of lepar, and we can't just rely on the chukah that's in the parsha of Achimois, because the chukah might not be referring to the azois. Why? Because these azois don't have to be done in the right order. How could you possibly say this? Zokrashi l'Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda ikuva mehacha yalav. So how could you say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you learn that it's ma'akiv from the par? It says v'chila mikaper es hakodesh. So let's have a look. This is talking about the avodas of Yom Kippurim and Achimois, and the pasuk says v'chila, when he finishes michaper es hakodesh, from being mechaper es hakodesh v'shal moed v'samizbeach vikr v'sasar achai. So we have a drasha. Vatanya v'chila mechaper es hakodesh. Im kiper kila. If he was mechaper already, then kila, he's done for the day. V'im loy keeper, if he wasn't mechaper, loy kila, he's not done for the day. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. What does that mean? Zokt Rashi, im kiper kapara hamakeves b'shar mekoymes. If you did avoida that's ma'akev in other places, kagoin matnas domim, matan sheva, umatan dalid. If you did the matanos, then kila, then you're finished avoida and you're good to go. Even though you didn't sprish the shiraim le'isoid, but you were mechaper already. You already poured it down. Then the carbon is nisratza. Then loy keeper loy chila. Different bekiva. Amar Yehuda, but that's you're reading the pasuk out of order. It doesn't say v'chiper v'chila, where you could say if you're mechaper then you're done. It says v'chila mechaper. So therefore, the way you should read it is miplayman loy nemar im kila keeper. Then loy kila Amar Kiva miplayman loy nemar im kila keeper im loy kila loy keeper. It says v'chila mechaper. So therefore, it says. Well, I'm not reading this right. 1 second. Let me see how Rashi explains it. Why wouldn't you darshan the pasuk this following way? In the order that it's written, so the lashon is why aren't you darshaning it in order? And that would be imkila keeper, unless you did everything as listed in the Torah, including the shvicha shirayim liyasoid, then it will be mechaper. So this is the machlokas tanoim that we referenced several times in the last couple of days, whether or not by the chatois hapnimius, if you need to put the shirayim on the yasoid or not. So here there's a machlokas. According to Rabbi Kiva, you don't have to pour the shirayim on the yasoid, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, you do. So Zok Gemara, Amar Papa. So the problem is we should learn it. We should learn it from here, right? From here we learn, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we learn from the Chila v'Chiper that everything has to be done, including Shvicha Shuraim Liyasoid. So that's how you know that all of the Zrikas are Ma'akiv. So why do I need a pasuk? According to Rabbi Kiva, why did I need to learn it out of V'cheni Tasa? Amar Papa lo nitzrucha ela la'es dam u'v'tfila. There's 3 special limudim that we learn from the word es, dam, and betfila. Where does it say these 3 words? It says it by the par koyin HaMashiach. So it says by the par koyin HaMashiach, v'nosin l'koyin min adam al kainis mizbach ketoris asamim l'fnei Hashem asher ba'el moed. It's not in this pasuk. It is v'taval ha'koyin es etzboi. So it has es, it says etzboi, badam. So these 3 words, the Gemara is going to dash soon. Es, etzboi, badam. We learn 3 halachas out of these 3 words by Par Kohen and Mashiach. And the reason why we have the V'chein Ta'asa is to include these have three halachas that the Torah teaches us by Par Kohen HaMashiach to tell us that it also applies. It also applies to Par of Yom Kippur. Zog the Gemara, what are these three things? S tells us the following halach. Amar B'Acha B'Yaakov, Lo nitzricha el lahachshir amin shebe'etzba. If you had a boil or a pimple or a wart on your hand, would that be a chatitza? Would that pass al avoda? So from S we learn that no, even if you have a pimple on your hand, that's not a chatitza, and it would still be a good avoda. Bidam. What do we learn from Bidam? Sheyehei Bidam shir tefila meikar. Meaning the keli that you dip your finger into, that the kohen dips his finger into to get dam, has to have a shir tefila in it. And if it doesn't, it's not going to be kosher. Which means, Dr. Rashi, Lemute kibel pachas mektei tefila bechlizeh, upachas mektei tefila bechlizeh ve'irva. In one keli, you have to be mekabel enough dam to be mekayim dezrikos. If you didn't, and you split it up into two kelim, that would pass al avodah. So that's what we learn from B'dam. And the toval, we learn v'loy misafeg, meaning there has to be nice blood in the keli that you dip your finger into. What you can do is like wipe from the rim, like use your finger as a spatula, like I used to do when my mother used to make cake. I used to lick from the bowl. I used to want to eat the batter, so you can't do it that way. The itrik lemichtav b'dam, the pasuk needs to tell you that we have to have a critical mass of dam in the keli. The ikaz of rachman of a tovel, if it only had b'tovel, because you could think with tovel the same thing. You can't pull it off the walls. You got to dip your fingers in. So isn't it basically the same limud? No, you need b'dam. The ikaz of rachman of a tovel, if it only had b'tovel, have amina afal gab the lekeshir tefila meikara. Yes, you have to tovel. You can't wipe it off the edge, but it doesn't mean lechatchila in one keli you have to be mekabel all the dam. But tovel tells you that in one keli you have to be mekabel all the dam. So therefore, chaz rachman of dam. The ikaz of rachman of dam, but if it only said b'dam, have amina afilu misapik. Yes, there has to be a lot of dam that you're mekabel. But who said you have to dip your finger into it? Maybe you could shake the keli around and then take it off the walls. So there's two requirements. So these three halachas, that a wart is not a chatitza. You have to have enough dam in the one keli that you're makabel for all the zrikas, and three, that you cannot take the dam off the wall. Those are the three halachas that we learned from Par Kohen HaMashiach, and they're going to get exported to the Par of Yom Kippur. Zog to Gemara, Mizbach Ketayr Samim Lamali. We're talking about the extra words in the pasuk, so let's address some other words in the pasuk that are seemingly extra. What does the pasuk say? V'nosan nakayin min adam al karnois mizbeach Ketayr Samim Lufnei Hashem. Why did it have to say Mizbeach Ketayr Samim? I mean, we know that that's what we're talking about. So that's the Gemara's kash. Mizbeach Ketayr Samim Lo Moli. Zog to Gemara, you know why you need it? We know why it says Mizbeach Ketayr Samim, doesn't just say Mizbeach, because it's ma'akiv, the Mizbeach that you spritz the dam from the par on has to be a Mizbeach that had already been used for Ketayrs. If it's a brand new Mizbeach and they were not a ma'akiv Ketayrs on it, you wouldn't be able to make zrika. And Stefanski has a funny video clip that Moshe Rubin posted on our chat. Who's that Rosh Hashiva who spent like $20 million on the Zohar Kodesh? This guy Sorochkin. So he had like a video of the Mizbeach. Haktar's got a crack in it, and the Beis Hamikdash committee went to some cheap Chinese knockoff shop to rebuild the Mizbeach for them. And it shows how it's being built very, very simple. And then Sorotskin finds out about it. And Sorotskin gets on a private jet. He flies to India and he personally supervises the building of a highly elaborate gold, fancy Mizbeach. And he comes back and puts it into the Beis HaMikdash. Zog more weiter. Tanya Kavasei Rav Papa. V'asa kasher asa. So what did Rav Papa say? Rav Papa said, the hekesha l'es b'dam v'tfila asa. So Rav Papa was the one who told us just recently that the hekesh to Yom Kippur, we use it to share the message of es, v'taval, and b'dam. So Tanya goes to Rav Papa. V'asa kasher asa. Ma tamad loimer, lepar. What's lepar for? L'rabbis par hayom kippurim l'chol ma she amar be'inyin. Divrei Rebbe, there are those who learn Divrei Rebbe Kifa. Rabbi Shmuel, Kal v'chomer. I have a Kal v'chomer. But before we do that, let's just look at what Rebbe said. Rebbe said lepar is l'rabbis par hayom kippurim l'chol ma she amar be'inyin. From the l'chol ma she amar be'inyin, we're learning that the Bryce is trying to tell us that even the nuanced details of B'Tovel, Es, and B'Dam, that's what it's telling us. So you see, like where Papa just said, that that's what we're using Lepar for. So what does it say in Rashi? L'chol amar be'inyin, hakoil b'chalal, even Es, B'Dam, utfila. So you see that even that is what we're learning from the par Kohen Mashiach to the par of Yom Kippur. But Rabbi Shmuel, so we brought our raya. Now the Gemara is saying, "Oh, Rabbi Shmuel Kal v'chomer." I don't need to learn Yom Kippur from par Kohen Mashiach with a remez of lapar. I have a Kal v'chomer. Here's the Kal v'chomer. It won't make any sense to us at first, but the Gemara is going to develop it. Kal v'chomer. U'ma b'mokim shaloi hush v'karbon l'karbon. Madach in a place where the two carbonas aren't the same, which the Gemara is going to explain soon, that it's done with a different type of animal. Nevertheless, hishve maisim lemaisim, we still say that the same way that they did the avodah with animal A, in this place, they did the same avodah with animal B in the other place. Mokam shahushva carbon lekarbon, when it is the same type of animal, surely the process of the carbon should be the same. So according to Rabbi Shmuel's Kal v'chomer, where I don't need any special limud to learn the par Yom Kippur from the par Kohen Mashiach, so why did it say lepar in the pasuk to include par Yom Kippurim? Zeh par helam davar shel tzibor, that's referring to the, so lipar is referring to the par of Shal Tibor, and lipar ze par Kohen Mashiach. So let's go back to the pasuk and let's see what it says. It says v'asa lipar. This is the par held of Shal Tibor. Kashasar lipar, like you did to the par Kohen HaMashiach. Now we darshan v'asa lipar due to the par Yom Kippurim. Kashasar lipar Kohen HaMashiach. But that's not how Rabbi Shmuel is learning, because Rabbi Shmuel is learning, I don't need Yom Kippur here, because I could learn everything from a Kal v'chomer, which we'll get to. Now, we have another problem. What do you mean? The Torah is saying you should do to the par whatever you did to the par. That's what the whole pasuk is about. The lapar is extra, right? We started off from also lapar. From there, we have like the second halacha where the Torah is telling us about all those rikas, because we already told you about all those rikas. But a par of Shal Tibor, when it says also lapar, kasher also, that automatically includes it. The lapar, the Gemara said, is extra over and above that, and that applies to Yom Kippur. So you can't just go back and say it's referring to the Helam Davar Shal Tibor and the par Kohen Mashiach. That doesn't take care of the extra lapar. So we have to figure out what that's going to be about, which the Gemara is going to get to. But now let's focus on this unusual Kal v'chomer that Rabbi Shmuel made. Amar Mar. Let's go analyze this Kal v'chomer. Uma b'mokod shaloi hushva carbon lekarbon. Frankly, what does that mean? Lohushva carbon lekarbon. My lohushva carbon lekarbon. Ilema, that we're comparing Par Yom HaKippurim to the Sir Yom HaKippurim, and the Kavachomer is Madach, you have two karbanos on Yom Kippur, where there are different animals. There's a par and a seer. Yet, if you follow the avodah that's supposed to be done with the par, what's supposed to be done with the seer, you'll find that the avodas are identical. So, madach, when you have two different animals, the avodah is identical. Kol shekein, when you're comparing the par Yom HaKippurim to the par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor, they're both the same type of animal. Kol shekein, their avodah should be identical. That would be the Kal V'chomer. In fact, Gemara, you can't make such a comparison because Igal Mifrach Malahanich Shekei Nichnas Domam Lefnai Lefnim. The Par Yom HaKippurim and the Sir Yom HaKippurim, you know why their avodah the same, because they have another very intimate similarity that the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor doesn't have. That by the Par Yom HaKippurim, the Kohen Gadol spritzes the dam on the Aron in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So therefore, they're similar, even though they might be a different animal. But you can't bring me a raya from there that the Par Yom HaKippurim should be the same as the Par Helam Davar. Ella, let's try another pair. Ella Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor Usirei Avodas Kacham. Those are both only spritzed on the Mizbeach Hazav, not in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. And again, Madich, those are two different types of animals. Yet, if you follow the process of their avodah, they're identical. Surely, the Par Yom Kippur should be identical as far as its process to the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor. So that's not either a good kasha, because Ikal Mifrach Malahanech the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor and the Sir Avodas Kachavim shekei mechaprin al aveiras mitzvah yidua. You bring a Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor when we know Klal Yisrael ate chaylev, when we know Klal Yisrael did avodah zarah, but the general par that's brought on Yom HaKippur, that's not for a very specific Aveir. It's all for Tumas Mikdash V'Kadoshim. It's all for unknown Aveirs. So therefore, you shouldn't bring a raya. So let's try another set. Elapar Helam Davar Shel Tzibor U'Seir Shel Yom HaKippurim. Let's make them a pair. Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor and the Seir Shel Yom HaKippurim have exactly the same avodah. V'Achikom L'ma B'Mokim Shelo Hushvu Carbon LeCarbon. Madach, when you have a case with these two karbonos, the seer of Yom Kippurim and the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor, they're a different type of carbon, the high par, the high seir. Nevertheless, hushvu ma'isem l'ma'isem, l'may dechasavu. So the question is, what do you mean hushvu ma'isem l'ma'isem? The seer of Yom Kippurim, they spritz the dam in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. They don't spritz the dam of the Kodesh in the Kodesh HaKodeshim for Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor. So we have to add a knesh. You're right. There might be avodas that you do by the Seir of Yom Kippurim that you don't do by the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor. But whatever avodas they share are done in the identical fashion. Meaning, the way you spritz the blood in the Heichel, they're identical. So, Lagabe, what they both have to do, the instructions are identical. So, therefore, Mokim Shahush v'Karbon l'Karbon, meaning comparing the Par Yom Kippurim to the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor, the high par, they're both a par. Einoidin, surely shahushvu maisim lemaisim. Surely, whatever avodos that they do, they should be doing the same. Gewaltig. V'asalei, and therefore, v'asalei Par Yom Kippurim le'es b'dam utfila mi par koyin mishiach. We'll be able to learn the es b'dam utfila, these three halachas from the par koyin mishiach. V'asalei Sir Yom Kippurim, and the Sir Yom Kippurim we could learn mi seirei avodas kachavim mikal v'chayim. Okay, so that's already a whole new shtickle. So let's stop over here and let's see Rashi on that last couple of Madich, when you compare the Seir of Yom Kippurim to the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor, where it's Hushvu Maisim Lemaisim Lemay Dechasabu, at least the avodas that they share, they're identical. L'masha Pirush HaKosav Ba'azois HaKsuvas Behen Lo Shina Zumizu. Whatever the Torah says that they both have in common, the zrikas that they have in common are identical. Elu ala paroiches, ve'elu ala paroiches. Side the Syria make Kippurim, you spritz down the Paroiches from within the Hechel, and side the Par Helam Dav Shal Tzibor, you spritz down the Paroiches. And Elu Alakronos, Velo Alakronos. The Syria make Kippurim, the Kohen Gadol spritzes the blood on the 4 kronos. The same thing happens with a Par Helam Dav Shal Tzibor. And Elu Betz or Velo Betz. And both Karbonis, the Zrika is done not by splashing it out of the Machta, out of the Mizrak, but out of using the finger. It doesn't say those words by the Syria Yom Kippurim. Nevertheless, so you're going to ask, they're not the same, because it doesn't say Es B'dam Tefillah. Zokt Rashi, Ein Zeh Shinui. That's not a concern. The Ikal Meimer, Loi Pirish Es HaKoil. It's not explaining everything. So now we're saying whatever the Torah lists is identical. Something that doesn't list is not a kasha. So that's where we're learning from. If one of them goes lefnim and one doesn't go, or ton shmoina azois, ton sheva avois, minu miu lamai dechsibu loshina. So Rashi now is managing a problem we have, because even the hazoyos that they share, it's not mamish exactly alike. For instance, the fact of the matter is by the Sir Yom Kippurim, the Kohen goes into the Kodesh Kodashim, but the Par Hel Dav Shal Tzibur does not go into the Kodesh Kodashim. V'zeton Shmoina Azois, because it's Achas L'mayla v'Sheva L'mata, right? So it's really 8 Azois. V'zeton Sheva, but the Par Hel Dav Shal Tzibur only needs 7. So L'maita, there are avoiders that the Sir Yom Kippurim has, that the Par Hel Dav Shal Tzibur doesn't, but we're not worried about that, because the ones that the Torah specifies that are the same, those are done exactly in the same fashion. So therefore, Riba Avodas Bezeh, Yosy Bezeh, Mikol Mokim, Ma'isa Avodas Hitrich L'Shneim Loishina. So it doesn't bother us if one might have more avodas than the other. The Syria Mekippurim has more avodas than the Par Hel Shal Tzibur, but whichever ones are similar, they're identical. So therefore, Mokim Shahush v'Karbon l'Karbon, the high par v'high par. So when you're comparing the Par Helam Dav Shal Tzibur to the Par of Yom Kippurim, and Yidin Sheyushvu, surely Ma'isa Avodos HaShoves B'Shneim, any avodah that applies to both of them should be done in the identical fashion. Kagoy Nazois to Paroiches V'Shal Mizbach Hazah. Okay, we'll stop here, Bez Hashem, and we'll be mamshech tomorrow. So we had a whole blot analyzing a brisa.